So today I'm going to be talking about the ideals of womanhood and the American prison system of the 1950s. I'm particularly looking at a case study. Um, there was a woman in 1954. Her name was Pauline Aumacher. She was sentenced to 1 year at the Ohio Reformatory for Women, which is located in Marysville, Ohio. And her crime is officially documented in the admission records of the prison as neglect. And then, other than that, it doesn't say too much else. By talking to some of her family members that are still around today, I was able to sort of get a picture of what happened that led her to end up at the Ohio Reformatory for Women. So Mrs. Aumacher was married to a man named Ernest Aumacher, and they had 5 children together. And they were married for quite a few years. I believe they were married in 1939, and by the time 1954 rolls around, all 5 children are born. And the oldest one, I believe, was about 14 years old. And it appears that there was potentially some issues within their marriage and their relationship together. And it led to Mrs. Aumacher, Pauline Aumacher, leaving her husband and children to be with another man. Now, Mr. Aumacher was certainly not pleased with this, and so he sought justice by using the help of an attorney to see what he could do to help with the situation. So together they pursued a legal case against Mrs. Aumacher, and they were able to charge her with neglect of the children who were left behind when she left her home, husband, and children. So, as a result of that, Pauline Aumacher was sentenced to 1 year at the Ohio Reformatory for Women. And it's interesting that she was sent to this prison in particular because it appears that most of the programs at the prison were designed to make these women who were sent there into basically better wives and mothers. In several newspaper articles, the prison superintendent, Marguerite Riley, who was appointed at first temporarily and then kept on for a number of years. A lot of her programs were designed to teach women how to be good wives. A lot of her programs included, for example, cooking, cleaning. In one newspaper article in particular, I believe it was the Marysville Tribune, and it was a 1952 article, she states that serving is another one of the main objectives that the women at the prison were supposed to learn. And the prison, she also states in the same article that the prison is supposed to have a homey feeling to it. The women make their own curtains and drapes, and they decorate their cells or their rooms to be their own little homes. in addition to that, they do their own laundry and learn how to take care of a home, basically. Um, in another newspaper article, Marguerite Riley states that, you know, her hope and the prison's hope for all the girls that are sent there is for them to have a home, a husband, and children. So that's pretty telling. And then along with the prison programs, which are documented in photos and also described by Mrs. Riley herself, it indicates that the prison was for these women, the Ohio Reformatory for Women in the 1950s. Basically, they were trying to conform these women into the ideal form of womanhood in the 1950s. So that honestly, that looks like through looking at mostly like social guidance films from the time period. I know social guidance films are films such as McGraw-Hill text films and Corno films. All of these films were created to go along with textbooks and teaching aids. And the whole goal of the films were to socially educate children of the 1950s. And also some of the films are geared towards adults as well, which is also interesting. But these films were used to educate children mainly in school settings from the end of the Second World War all the way up until the 1970s. And a lot of the films deal with, for example, marriage, how to act in a social setting, and a lot of them actually depict women and their roles and what their role should be in society and what their role should be as wives and mothers. There was one particular film where it suggests that women are generally happier when they are at home with children to care for. And the idea of not having that for the woman in the film was only half a life. So with all of that and all of the films, most of the films, the social guidance films, depict women, they never depict women working. And if they do, sometimes they do depict women as secretaries, but often these women are unmarried. But all of the women who are married in most of these films are depicted taking care of their home, cleaning, cooking, and also serving the men who are around them in the films. There is one particular film from the Edison Electric Company. So this film was probably created to sell electrical items to homeowners in the 1950s. So this film revolves around a young woman, and basically the entire film she is shown to be vacuuming, cooking dinner for her brother and her brother's friend and her father, serving them, and also in the same film by the Edison Electric Company, her brother's friend specifically says to the young woman that this kitchen is designed with the modern housewife in mind particularly. It makes her job, cooking, cleaning, and taking care of things way easier than it would have been years ago. And it's very interesting that he specifically says that the kitchen is designed to make the housewife's job easier. And so basically the ideal form of womanhood that the Ohio Reformatory for Women was trying to conform their inmates to was the housewife. Through all of the social guidance films that I've looked at and watched, it's pretty clear that the image and the ideal woman is a housewife during the 1950s. Very seldom is there a woman who is independently working in any of these films. Often it's generally the woman is at home with her children and often in the kitchen. Quite a bit of the time the wives are in the kitchens in a lot of these films, which is interesting. And that's interesting as well because one of the biggest programs that Marguerite Riley, the superintendent of the Ohio Reformatory for Women, enacted was one of the programs was cooking. So, they would cook for the entire prison in this program. They would learn how to cook. And it was considered vitally important for these girls to learn how to cook for their future families, or maybe the families, like in Pauline's case, the families that they would be going back to after their stay at the Ohio Reformatory for Women. So basically, in Pauline Amacher's case, her crime and behavior was essentially exactly opposite of the ideal form of womanhood that both the Ohio Reformatory for Women and the mainstream media of the time period felt was appropriate. Pauline basically, by leaving her family, her established family, and her role as a wife and mother, she was rejecting what was socially acceptable for the time period. And if you think about it, all of the social guidance films were made to, like I said before, they were made to educate people and to help them learn how society expected them to behave. But in Pauline Amacher's case, she rejected that idea. And going to the Ohio Reformatory for Women, I think it was so interesting because just so many of their programs included cooking, canning, baking bread, making butter, gardening, weaving, sewing, doing laundry, scrubbing floors, all of the tasks that are in the prison programs were designed to help them become good wives and good mothers. They were giving them the tools that they would need to be successful in that in that kind of life. So yeah, that is all I have. And thank you guys for listening.